tonight's all about cholesterol. And my first question for all of you is, when you hear the word cholesterol, do you think good or do you think bad? Bad. Okay. Let me give you a little story of why you think bad. So in the 1920s and 1930s, we really started the science of dissecting the human body and investigating it for disease. And what we found is the people who have suffered heart attacks, we would open them up and open up their hearts, and we would notice that the arteries that lead to the heart had yellow plaquing on them. And so then we scraped off that yellow plaquing, because obviously the plaquing was preventing proper blood flow, which would stress the heart. It could predispose to somebody to having a heart attack. So when we removed the plaquing, we put it on the microscope and we saw that was these fatty deposits, much of which was made out of, was the constituents of that fatty deposit was cholesterol. So we made the conclusion that cholesterol leads to heart attacks. So we went in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and particularly in the 70s and 80s, we went on the what train? What kind of diets were recommended to get is fat-free diet. And we had an explosion of fat-free foods, didn't we? We had everything that was, we went from regular milk to fat-free milk. We went from regular cream cheese to fat-free cream cheese, yet they all tasted the same, by the way, didn't they? Like, it's still creamy. Not really, but they tried, right? The food industry has tried really, really hard to infuse our fat-free foods with other things to make it creamy tasting, whatnot. So we have with the wide use of microwaves, it enabled that fat-free trend to continue. And what have we produced? We have produced heavier people, and we actually have the statistics of obesity are higher than they ever have been, and particularly because we went on this fat-free diet. So it's interesting that most of you think when I said the word cholesterol bad, but this is where it comes from, because we have associated cholesterol with heart disease. So now let me ask you this. If somebody has gray hair, does that mean that they're old? No. Right. But as you age, as you get older, you get more gray hair, right? Okay. So see kind of the issue with that? So can we conclude then, just because you get old and you have gray hair, that gray hair causes aging? Okay. So same thing with this concept of, because we have cholesterol in arteries, it causes heart disease. Should we really make the assumption that cholesterol, just because there's a presence of cholesterol in heart disease, should we make the assumption that cholesterol is the causing factors of heart disease? Nope. Not necessarily. Nope. Right. So if cholesterol is so bad, by the way, where do you get cholesterol from? What's the number one I'm sorry?
Body produces it.
Body produces it. Thank you. So your body produces cholesterol. So if it was so bad, why does body produce cholesterol? And the organ that produces cholesterol, by the way, is your liver. So why do we need, obviously for produce it, we need it. So why does the body produce cholesterol?
Brain function.
Brain function, okay, right. Why did I put it on the bottom? Sorry, Liz. Brain function, okay. Anyone else? Couple of things. Cholesterol is needed to produce your stress hormones. So it's necessary to produce your adrenaline, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. So you put your stress hormones. This is important to remember. It's important, cholesterol is needed. It's a precursor. It's the ingredient to produce your sex hormones, so testosterone and estrogen. So what makes us female and male hormones. Cholesterol is needed to produce bile acid. So it helps bind impurities and what my son calls it number two, create number two, right? You're gonna laugh at that, okay, bile acid. So it's very important for elimination. And then we need cholesterol on a cellular level for every single cell in your body. Because what cholesterol does, if you ever looked at, again, I use my 4-year-old as an example a lot, but how I get him to eat grapefruits is I cut him up and I remove the membrane and I said, look, Dorian, this is the smallest cell. And he calls it eating cells. It's really kind of funny. You know, they're little cells. It's the smallest cell. So the membranes of the human cells will keep the cell walls together. It's cholesterol. Cholesterol is sticky. It's like a glue. So if you look at the cell walls of every single, be it a heart cell, your muscle cell, your brain, particularly whoever said brain function, we'll talk about cholesterol there. So if you look at the cell wall, it has these building blocks, and what keeps the building blocks of the cell wall together is cholesterol. So cholesterol is the glue that keeps the cell together. So cholesterol is needed to keep your cells together. So cell wall or cell architecture. Okay. So most of your cholesterol is produced in the liver, but here's an interesting fact. Liver has 500 known jobs that we know of, and probably more. And if liver gets overwhelmed with other things that it does, your cells, each individual cell in your body has the capacity to produce its own cholesterol. So in itself, there's little factories that can produce cholesterol, okay? So we'll call them cholesterol producing factories, okay? Because that's how important your cholesterol is, okay? So the dietary cholesterol that we take actually plays very little, and it has a very small role in the concentration of our overall cholesterol in our body. Really, much of the cholesterol we have in our body is produced by our body. Some of us may produce more cholesterol than others. What's the one reason why an individual might produce more cholesterol than another person? Stress. Why? Because when you're under stress, you produce a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, which are the building blocks to help you respond to stress. So if I was gonna, like rushing here was a stressful thing for me. Pleasurable, but stressful, right? Stress can be positive and negative. This was a positive stress. Getting married, positive or negative. Getting divorced, positive, negative. Depends. It was a positive stress for me. So my body, I felt my heart rate going up. I was producing cortisol. And my body needed a oomph in cholesterol to help me manufacture that cortisol. So it will be a healthy response. My body's increasing cholesterol is a healthy response to the demands placed on the body, right? All right. Now, so that's like the physiology of cholesterol. Now, everyone talks about what kind of cholesterol. There's typically, what do we call them? There's 2 types of cholesterol, right? Does anyone know what they are?
LDH, I think it is.
LDL and HDL, right? So what are those? First of all, cholesterol is cholesterol. LDL stands for low density lipoprotein, and HDL stands for high density lipoprotein. So when we talk about LDL and HDL, they're not different cholesterols. They're just different proteins that serve different jobs in helping your body mobilize cholesterol for its use. By the way, did you know that if your body produces extra cholesterol, you never secrete it out? You never pee it out? Your kidneys recycle and metabolize it back to your body. So that's how vital cholesterol is to your daily function, okay? Now we talked about, so LDL and HDL. Okay. You eat something, you eat an egg. Oh, by the way, going to the importance of the brain function. So you know about the nerves? They look like this. They're very specialized cells. And what's really neat about nerves is that they have kind of like a head and a long body and then a tail. And this long body is so fragile that your body makes a myelin sheet around it to protect it, and also to help the messages that go from the head down the body and through the tail or the synapse to go faster. That sheet is called the myelin sheet, which is made up of fat, and much of it is made out of cholesterol. So diseases of multiple sclerosis, degenerative cognitive diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. There's a disruption in the myelin sheathing, particularly in the multiple sclerosis, and that's why you see, or Parkinson's disease, that's why you see the person kind of skipping, their message is skipping, their gait is shuffled, is because you have these abnormal signals that are going down to the nerve roots. So going back to the brain function. One other thing about cholesterol, since I have an infant, majority of mammals' milk that is produced, the fat from it is cholesterol, because the number one thing that a human or a mammal needs to build is the brain, particularly the humans, right? So, because brain is, what percentage of our brain is made of fat? 60% of our brain is fat. And part of it is cholesterol, part of it is the EPA, and bigger part is the DHA. So that's why Dr. Cameron always talks, are you taking your fish oils, right? Okay. So let's go back to the LDL and HDL. So LDL, as I shared with you, is a protein molecule, and HDL is a protein molecule as well. So you eat an egg, right? You eat an egg. And what happens is you have dietary cholesterol getting released into your bloodstream, right? Everything travels through bloodstream. Actually, I'm going to make these into little squares. Squares are your cholesterol molecules, okay? Or your body is manufacturing it through liver. You're manufacturing cholesterol, so now cholesterol needs to travel through your bloodstream. Blood is like water. Cholesterol is like olive oil. What happens if you put water in olive oil?
Doesn't mix.
It doesn't mix, right? The fat stays on top, the water settles on the bottom, right? So same thing will happen to cholesterol in your bloodstream unless there was something to move it or carry it, right? So LDL, think of it as a delivery truck that goes into your bloodstream, and it picks up the molecules and delivers it. It picks up the molecules and dumps it if your body needs it. Pardon me, sorry, this is your LDL. It takes the cholesterol made from liver and dumps it into your bloodstream, okay? Now, your HDL is an empty truck on the other side of your cell that will pick up the LDL molecule and deliver it where it's needed. So that's your HDL, okay? So there are two proteins. One job is to take the cholesterol and put it into the bloodstream, and the other one's job is to take the cholesterol from the bloodstream and deliver it where it needs to be done. So that's why we tend to think of them as bad and good, because bad being LDL, he's not bad, it's just a protein whose job is to put the cholesterol in the bloodstream, and then the HDL, we think of it good because it takes that cholesterol out of the bloodstream. And that's why I always urge the patients, it doesn't matter what your numbers are, what matters is the ratio between the two. And really doesn't matter what your total cholesterol is, because today your cholesterol might be higher because you were in a car accident, and then it will be a week from today when you're on vacation because of stress, because of the demands, because of your diet. Okay? So what we care about is really the overall relationship between the LDL and HDL and your total cholesterol and the HDL. And we'll talk about the ratios and numbers. That's why it's so important that we really focus on this and less on this, which many practitioners do, or the total cholesterol number, right? And you probably have heard that, and we'll talk, again, more numbers. Any questions about this? Okay. So you should be all asking yourself, okay, now I know that cholesterol is produced by my body. It's important for my body. But why does it clog up arteries? You know, why did it get this bad rep? And why, you know, are we targeting, or why, and we'll talk a little bit about statin medications and what they do, but why are people prescribed medication for something that our body naturally produces and we need it every single day? Okay. So we talked about the blood vessels, and when we started to study cholesterol, that we found plaques along the arteries in our body.
Did you say plaque or cracks?
Plaques, okay, that are mainly made of cholesterol. So what will happen is when the blood is flowing, there's a restricted blood flow, which would stress the artery, cause it to overstretch, and that could eventually lead to the heart disease. So why does this form in the first place? I mean, do we stop our science investigation just by saying there's a plaque, heart disease, and that's it? That's what we did, and that's what's ended up this mess that we're currently in when it comes to cholesterol and heart disease. So what the science has figured out is that if any tissue, in your body, if it has an injury, your body will rush the elements that are needed to rebuild that tissue. So when you cut yourself or scrape yourself, what will happen? You'll have a rush of red blood cells and plasma cells, and probably white blood cells too, to fight any possible infection, to repair that tissue. So that yellow that you see from once your cut is forming, that's the majority of that is made of cholesterol and plasma cells. So your body's healing and scarring that. So think of plaquing in the arteries as really body's attempt to heal a scrape or to heal a cut. Now, how could someone get a scrape in their arterial walls? What causes them? All right. So you probably know that what? Those trucks, yeah. No, yeah, from marching all the time. No, the trucks are good. So you probably know that we're all made out of cells, and cells are made out of atoms, and atoms are made out of electrons and neutrons, right? So if you look at the atom on the smallest scale, what you'll find is that there is a nucleus, right? And then around the nucleus, there's an orbit of paired up electrons that are keeping that atom stable, right? And electrons have to exist in pairs for that atom, again, to stay stable. So this would be how basically the deepest the deepest level of the cell would look like. Now, what happens is sometimes something bad can come around, and something bad is really an atom that is unstable, and it's usually missing, so these are pairs, it's usually missing an electron. So this one doesn't have a partner. So this atom that's unstable will go into its neighbor and steal an electron to neutralize itself. Okay? Now, unfortunately, when this guy gets neutralized, this guy goes radical and goes crazy. And so then he'll go to his neighbor and try to borrow an electron to neutralize itself. And the cascading effect happens. Now, what we call an atom that is not stabilized, doesn't have an electronic pair to itself, we call it a free radical. So you've heard this term free radical thrown around all the time, right? We're fighting free radicals. You never knew what that was. It's just an atom that doesn't have all its electrons paired up, and it's looking for something or another atom to steal from to neutralize itself. So let me give you the best example of free radical. You cut an apple and you leave it on your countertop. What happens to the apple? It browns. That browning is free radical formation, and that's a free radical formation. Now, what would happen if you put lemon juice on your apple? It stays, right. You don't have the free radical formation. So that lemon juice is what's known as an antioxidant, which comes in and helps the oxidation process, which is really free radical formation, and neutralizes it by letting these unstable atoms borrow its own electrons and neutralizes it, right? So it stays free radical free.
I realize that on the outside is
that's what's
on the inside
right,
too?
right, right.
Wow,
That's what it is. So when you cook your food and that dark burnt stuff, that's free radicals.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole bunch of unstable atoms in your food that when you ingest are going to go into your bloodstream and look for something or a cell to borrow from to neutralize itself.
No, really?
Yes. So what will happen is, as these free radicals enter through the diet, and also, by the way, free radical formation, every time you exercise or every time you exhale, the carbon dioxide you're making, that's free radicals. We're constantly exposed to free radicals. You know, just in the air, just by breathing in, right? By exercising, by metabolizing food. That process of oxidation is happening all the time, and our body's really equipped with dealing with it. It's when we add the other additional stresses of, you know, highly processed foods. By the way, trans fats, the partially hydrogenated fats, which are found in Girl Scout cookies, which I'm constantly attacked in our neighborhood, right? It's like, it drives me nuts. Those are unhealthiest cookies on the planet, and the kids are selling them. But anyways, partially hydrogenated fats or trans fats that are added to chips or your cookies or really what margarine is, those are fats that are unstable. So when you ingest them and when you have them in your bloodstream, guess what? They're going to go to the delicate structure of your arteries in the because remember, your arteries are made of cells and cells are made of atoms, and they're going to start to borrow basically electrons. And in the process of doing that, you're starting to get, I mean, I'm going to call it tearing, but that's probably not a technical term, but they're causing a disruption in the cellular walls of your arteries, which will now cholesterol go in to repair. So this plaquing is really an intelligent process. Your body is doing something right to undo the damage that you have done by your lifestyle. When I say you, I'm not saying you, but maybe all of us. So where are these free radicals coming from in excess? BBQ Foods for American. You've heard this. BBQ Foods. If you barbecue more than 2 times a week, your chances of colorectal cancer are significantly higher, right? You've heard that one of the reasons why Americans have such a high incidence of digestive cancer is because we invented the barbecuing process. Trans fats, which luckily we're eliminating, but in the 80s, what did we substitute butter for margarine, right?
Twinkie.
And we've caused more heart disease than we tried to eliminate. The bad pollution out there, that's exposure of free radicals. If you think about just in the water alone, how heavily we're treating our water, the chemicals that our body is not made to process, your body has to neutralize constantly. So that is, again, a stressor to your arteries, and one of the reasons why you have the plaque formation in the arteries. So cholesterol, again, is not the bad guys. If you look at these traditional diets, we all talk about the Mediterranean diet, and people are living long on the Mediterranean diet, but they're eating all this fat. But wait, what? It's confusing. Well, the reason why they're living so long is because they're eating whole foods. They're not eating processed foods, and they're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, which we talked about the lemon, right? It's full of antioxidants, which help neutralize the things that you're constantly bombarding your body with. So besides vitamin C, can anyone else think of other things that are powerful antioxidants that will help you neutralize the things that your body's constantly exposed to? Vitamin E, yes. Vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant, particularly targeted for your heart. So you can jot this down. Vitamin C, vitamin E, anything else? And CoQ10. CoQ10 is another powerful antioxidant that protects your brain and it protects the heart. There's other antioxidants, so those are pretty much the vitamin and the mineral we mentioned. But so when we talk about or food having a high antioxidant level, like foods like blueberries, foods like, all berry groups, but kale, spinach, it's their power to neutralize the free radical formation. Now, before we move on, there's another reason why your body can start to produce more cholesterol. So what you'll find, and this is I actually know to be true because my mom is a perfect picture example of this. My mom, if you look at it, she's 5'10". She's a size, 2, very small female, eats very healthy. She eats whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, and stays away from eggs and meats and fats. Okay. She doesn't eat a lot of processed foods. She never bakes. She doesn't eat – but her cholesterol numbers are on the higher side. 1 to So what's going on here? So another cause of higher amount of cholesterol in your body has to deal with less about how you eat cholesterol and the free radical formation, but about how you're eating and metabolizing sugar. And so this goes back to, I know, through the face, don't take out the sugar. Says the sugar head, no. So going back to one of the principles I gave you earlier, that every single cell can make its own cholesterol, that's what we're going to pay attention to. So there's two hormones in your body, so we're going to leave cholesterol for a second, that help you regulate your sugar. One is called insulin. So again, going back to my blood vessel here, we'll make sugar molecules around. Okay. So one is called insulin, and the other one is called glucagon. Just wanted to spell it right. Glucagon, okay? So insulin and glucagon are much like LDL and HDL. They're two hormones. One is responsible for taking sugar out of the blood, and one is responsible for putting sugar in your blood. So if you eat, and if you came to my sugar talk, I love to use this example. You had an Italian dinner with pasta, then you had dessert, then you went to movies and popcorn. You had carbs, 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 which when your body breaks down, it's all glucose, which is anything else is a sugar. So it's in your bloodstream, and your body's saying, oh no, because if you have any more than 5 grams of sugar in your bloodstream, cumulative blood sugar in your bloodstream, you will go in diabetic coma and die. So your body's saying, remove the sugar from the bloodstream. So what happens is your pancreas produces insulin. Insulin goes in. It's kind of like the HDL. It's a truck that goes in, and it says, come here, glucose, I'll pick you up. And it picks it up. And then it takes it where it needs to go. So come to my other talk all about sugar to know where it goes. So insulin removes it, and now your blood sugar is stable. Then the next day you wake up, you drink your coffee, you don't eat anything, you don't eat anything, you don't eat anything. It's 1 o'clock. Oh my goodness, I'm not eating anything, and I'm not hungry, but I'm jittery. What happened? Well, you didn't eat anything, and so guess what? This hormone, glucagon, goes to your liver, and it goes to your cells and says, we need sugar. The brain needs sugar to function. We need sugar for burning fuel. So sources dump it in. So glucagon goes around the body and puts sugar, glucose back. And that's how you're always managing your blood sugar levels. Make sense? All right. Now listen to this. Insulin, when you're constantly eating diet high in sugar, your body goes in an overprotective mode. Let's say one day you have the Italian meal with popcorn dessert. Then the next morning you have cereal, which is milk with cereal, which breaks down lactose, glucose, guess what, all oses, so all sugar. Then you have your sandwich, which is pretty much carbs, and then you have dinner again. So you go day in and day out of eating proportionally more carbs than anything else. And I told you sugar can be toxic and cause your body to collapse. So what's going to happen is your body's going to say, you're not treating me right. I'm going to always have more insulin on hand than you can handle. So that way, if you put more sugar in, I'm ready. I don't need to constantly be sending alarms off. Now, when you produce more insulin and it's hanging out in your body, insulin's job is not only to regulate sugar. Insulin has a direct impact on your growth hormone, your memory. It has so many other jobs than we focus on, which tends to be sugar. But one of the jobs of insulin on a cellular level is to tell the cell to produce more cholesterol. You need to kick in the production of cholesterol because this body's at state of stress. So now you have intercellular cholesterol production high. And so now when you're eating foods with moderate or even high amount of cholesterol, your HDL is not going to go to the cells and deliver it because the cells are saying, we're making our own. we don't need any more, thank you. So what will happen is your cholesterol is going to hang out in the bloodstream more. So your sugar, and this is why you'll see diabetics have trouble with cholesterol, and usually goes hand in hand, is because not that they're even eating that much cholesterol, it's that the fact that their sugar is off. And I guaranteed, because we went no fat diets, which meant high carb diets, because what are foods that have no fat and you know, but we're carbs, right? Because that's what we're looking at, zero fat. So what happened is we traded one for the other, and really the rise in cholesterol disease, if I can call it disease, is just a symptom of an insulin disease. So if you have high cholesterol, my first talk with you is, are you eating fats and protein? And let's eliminate sugars. Because probably what you've done is if you have high cholesterol, you stopped eating eggs and your numbers have not changed. Right? Right. So really the only way to reduce your cholesterol is to get your body to process sugar better. You might not be a diabetic, but diabetes is 10 to 15 years in making before we have the diagnosis of diabetes. Before that 15-year process is called insulin resistance. And how you know if you have insulin resistance? This is a quick self-check. You eat a meal, and you get really tired after it, and after 2 hours, you crave food again. If that's you, now it can happen sometimes. Thanksgiving time always happens to me, always. But in general, if you think about it, food serves two purposes. One, to renew, to give yourselves the building blocks so your cells can rebuild. And number two is to give you energy to function. So food should energize you. If food makes you tired, you're eating wrong foods, and likely that there's insulin resistance. So again, sugar talk is the next talk you must attend to understand that better. So let's talk about the conventional treatment of high cholesterol, right? What will happen is we invented, there's a brand of drugs called statins, right? I think lovastatin's one of them. What are some of the other ones? Okay, they're usually just ending in statin, right? So what statin drugs do is they go to your liver. That's why when you're on statin drugs, your liver enzymes are constantly tested. Statin drugs act on your liver. And what they do is they stop the production of cholesterol in your liver. Now here's what happens and why the statin drugs have been so dangerous. To produce cholesterol, think about it's cholesterol like making banana bread. Your body needs bananas, substance A, I don't know, it needs flour, substance B, oil, I don't know, a couple of things, right? You need a couple of things to put together to produce something, and then that, you know, D will produce something else, and then ultimately you produce cholesterol. I'm making this really simple. Now where cholesterol works, it works in a pathway where it stops the cholesterol production, not at the very end point, but it stops at mid-production. So now not only are you not making cholesterol, you're also not making a couple of other things that help make cholesterol. Make sense? So in that pathway, what you've done is you have enabled your body to stop producing something called CoQ10. Did I give you a list of antioxidants important to help you keep your heart healthy? Was CoQ10 one of them? Yes. Right. So in Canada, when statins were introduced, the physicians and cardiologists, along with the statin, gave people a dietary supplement of CoQ10 because they knew that it's the job, if we're going to stop cholesterol, we still need CoQ10 because it protects our hearts. Without CoQ10, your muscles, particularly because your heart is a muscle, don't function properly. So that's why people that have been on statins for a long time might notice, and I know, again, Dr. Cameron's aunt in New Jersey, she is paralyzed from taking statins because what's happened is that she's been depleted of CoQ10 for such a long time that she has muscle atrophy. So muscle weakness, muscle disease and heart disease have been linked to statins because of the elimination of CoQ10. Now, here's the thing about statins. You probably read some of the controversy about statins. They say that they reduce heart disease by 50%. That's how they got on the market, right? If you take a statin, your rate of getting a heart disease is reduced by 50%. How did they get to that number? Well, they took 100 people. They followed them over 10 years. They gave one group statin drugs to manage their cholesterol, the other nothing. In the group, so two groups, group A, I can't write, I'm so tired. Group A and group B. Okay, group A had the statin and group B had none. In group A, over 10 years, 1 out of 100 died due to heart disease. In group B, 2 out of 100 died out of heart disease. That means we saved 1 out of 2 lives, which is 50% of our lives. That's how they're allowed to report it. So they're allowed to say, statins have saved 50% of lives. No, they haven't. What they've saved is 1 additional life, which statistically is not significant enough. So 5 years ago, that's why there was a huge backlash against statin drugs. And if you kind of have been following this, you would have noticed it. But that's why doctors are now hesitant prescribing, because what we're noticing is that not only do they not have really significant effect on the heart disease, they can predispose you to heart disease because of elimination of CoQ10. And you can just Google this. By the way, that 50% statistics, that's how it's calculated. So it's that's referred to it as a relative statistic, not absolute. So they don't report the absolute values. So that's how statins work. I always tell my patients if they're on statins, it's not in my practice to tell them to take on or off the medication. We need to work on the diet, and they need to start supplementing with CoQ10 immediately. When we talk about cholesterol then, and if you're trying to reduce cholesterol in your diet, if you're going to take a holistic approach, you need to start to think cholesterol good. If your labs are showing high cholesterol, first thing you have to ask yourself, why is my body producing more cholesterol? Are my days more stressful now than they were 5 years ago or a year ago, right? Assess your lifestyle. Am I eating more foods higher in trans fats and free radicals? Is my body exposed to more free radicals than it has? Because it all comes back to diet. I love a quote, and it may sound harsh, but it really kind of resonates because it says, you cannot medicate yourself out of a disease you behaved yourself into. So it's always about behavior. It's always about the environment that we allow our body to live in, right? And are we giving our body the things that it needs to renew and thrive? If we're not, no medication is going to cure us. All it does is it prolongs our expiration date. Really, that's in essence all medication does. I'm not anti-medication, but we need to be realistic about what it does, okay? So when we talk about diet, what's a diet appropriate for somebody that wants to bring their numbers to a healthy range and particularly increase their HDL? So the diet, high, obviously fruits and vegetables, because that's a high amount of your antioxidants. High amount of healthy fats. So that's your animal protein, yes, your plant-based proteins, yeah, your nuts and seeds, and eggs. Eggs are extremely important in your diet. One of the first foods that babies should eat, it's actually egg yolk, because it's full of cholesterol, because you're feeding the nervous system above everything else, right? So now when you cook your eggs, because eggs are really fragile, here's another thing, if you want to get the benefits of cholesterol within an egg, is boil them, steam them, and do not overcook your eggs. So if you like them scrambled, turn off the heat in your pan before they're all cooked and it's kind of spongy, right? Because otherwise you're going to be creating free radicals in your food. So you want to be really gentle when you cook your foods, That's very important. And if you're grilling or baking your meats that are prone to a lot of free radical formation, you hear about marinating your meats in oils that have a high burning point, and making sure that you cook in oils that have a high burning point, right? So when you're frying your eggs, it's important, believe it or not to use olive oil. Olive oil has a burning point of 375 degrees. So you want to use coconut oil. If you're not a fan, like I don't like my eggs with coconut oil, you can buy avocado oil. Costco has a great deal on their avocado oils, which has a burning point of 500 degrees. If you're doing fried foods, which I don't think many of you are, but if you are frying, you can use, again, coconut oil or even palm oil. So oils that are solid at room temperature are great for frying. That's what one you want to use. Again, when you're cooking your food or baking your food, think about never really browning it. Although we like the idea of searing our meats, brings out the flavor. But again, you don't want to be eating burnt fruit. So when you're barbecuing your meats, make sure, again, that you coat, if you're doing your hamburgers, make sure you coat them in an oil before you put them on the grill to protect the structure of the protein that could be easily destroyed, okay? Foods that are high in antioxidants are your berries and your green leafy vegetables, right? So if you can't, eat, 6 servings of your green vegetables, that's what smoothies and those like juicing at home, that's what's really great about it, is because you're getting a lot for the serving size. It's an easier way, again, to enrich your diet without maybe necessarily eating it, although you should be eating it. And then, most importantly, is never eat a carbohydrate by itself. Never, ever, ever, ever. So never have just a piece of toast. If you're gonna have a piece of toast, pair it with some kind of a protein or pair it with a fat. Never, ever, ever, again, have a carbohydrate by yourself. So I don't know if any of you are vegetarians. That's the struggle the vegetarians have, is to making sure that they balance their protein intake with their carb intake, because again, vegetarians tends to have a higher diet in carbs. However, they also have a higher diet in antioxidants because they have eliminated other foods. That's a healthy vegetarian. So diet low in sugars. So basically eating breakfast that's high in protein and fat. So if you are going to have, we should not have cereals. That aisle of cereal should not exist. If a bad guy came and stole the cereal from the world, it would be okay. That aisle should not exist. So if you are a fan of cereals, go for rich granolas that don't have added sugar, and you put in a ton of nuts, put in some flax seeds, chia seeds, a lot of fats again, and use whole milk. Do not use non-fat milk. Like that, you should never buy that. So if you are a milk fan, we're not a big milk fan. There's a whole discussion about that. But if you are, buy whole milk and buy like non-homogenized milk with cream on top. We can talk more about that. Homogenization actually creates a lot of free radical formation because you're destroying the protein molecule of the milk, right? So, but think about your breakfast being protein rich. So that's your eggs, that's your even maybe your oatmeal, but add some protein powder in your oatmeal. Don't buy instant. Buy, the ones that you cook for a while. Add nuts, still cut, right? Lunch, think again, very little carbs, more protein. Again, my sugar talk is more about that and kind of really goes down into meal planning. But again, it's about sugar elimination and really restoring insulin resistance to reduce your cholesterol, okay?